This is The Substance.
Hello everyone and welcome to another Into the Void Real Review. This time we are reviewing The Substance, the thriller starring Demi Moore, Dennis Quaid, and Margaret Qualley and directed by Coralie Fargett. Right off the bat guys, I want to warn anyone who watches this that we will be getting into spoilers. I just don't think we can escape them in this review because this movie goes places, and to truly review this movie we need to get into the specifics of this one. So, with that out of the way, let's begin. This movie opens with an over-easy egg being injected with a syringe of some substance that ends up replicating a whole new egg with yolk and all. Then, we're dropped into the life of Demi Moore's character, Elizabeth Sparkle, an aging star in the realm of fitness and aerobics. Faced with the implications of being phased out of an industry that favors the young.
At 50, well, it stops.
She seeks out a drug called the Substance, which replicates cells and creates a younger, more striking version of herself. Once she attains the drug, she finds herself going down a self-destructive path that leads to a horrific and gruesome demise. It all starts out like a dream when she finds out that the Substance is legit, implementing its strict regimen of steps to a more youthful self. Enter Margaret Qualley as Sue, that younger bombshell version of Elizabeth Sparkle, who emerges from the husk of the latter after the first dose is administered via a syringe full of greenish liquid. There are some real body horror scenes here that match and even go beyond some of the things that have been witnessed in The Thing, or a closer correlation may be the remake of The Fly with Jeff Goldblum. Emerging out of the cocoon of her older self, Sue is a perfect specimen of human beauty. And at first, things work out as she auditions for the very job that will replace the iconic Elizabeth Sparkle.
You're hired.
She is immediately hired by Elizabeth's boss, Harvey, played by Dennis Quaid, to great effect as a sicko individual who is quick to let go of the very same person when she returns as her older self after the prerequisite 7-day feeding that the Substance requires to keep everything in balance. I'm not going to go into the specifics of how the drug works, but just know that it is basically a cloning tool that requires the old and young self to take turns being fed from food packets while being in a self-induced coma for 7 days. Everything is copacetic as long as everything's done according to plan. But that of course doesn't happen because Sue becomes more reticent about returning to the older existence of herself. It sets off a whirlwind of events in which Sue starts sabotaging Elizabeth by trying to prolong her days as her younger self by injecting herself with more than the recommended dose of spinal fluid from her older self. Then Elizabeth, after coming to as an older, more gnarled version of herself, starts to try to sabotage her younger self in her own way. It really takes the phrase self-destructive to a whole new level. Demi Moore has one of her best performances here as she plays the part of a woman who struggles with loving herself in a world that worships the young. It not only wrecks her life on a professional level, but on a personal level, which is very apparent in a scene where she tries to venture out on a date with a person from her past who seems to value her on a real level than a superficial one, but ultimately gives up when she struggles to put makeup on to appease her inner dislike of herself as an older female. Not only is Demi Moore very good in these moments, but also in the comedic moments where she watches Sue on a late night talk show and mimics her in a hilarious ditzy bimbo fashion that characterizes the young who just don't know how to respect their elders. It's that range that makes Moore's performance spectacular. Margaret Qualley in her own way is very good, playing a young, bright-eyed, and stunning woman who electrifies every scene she is in. She also plays the part well of a woman too young and driven to know what is good for her because everything seems to fall into her lap with relative ease and no friction at all. Overall, just great performances from the two leads, which makes the movie stronger for it. Everything, of course, spirals out of control because the two halves of the same person don't know how to play nice. I suspect that some people won't like how the film seems to go off the rails in the last act, but I love that it did. Things devolve into a woman wanting something so bad that only when they go too far does she realize that they never had it so bad in the first place.
I'm fine. Everything's fine.
But back to where I was saying that things go bananas at the end it's an understatement. The body horror on display here is some of the worst, and there are moments in this movie that will have you cringing and laughing at the same time because it has these funny moments within these horrific moments that will impart feelings that are truly unique in cinema. This movie's not for the squeamish, and I know there were equal parts of groaning and laughing in my theater where I watched this film. And on a side note, I found out that during a screening in Groningen, Netherlands, about 10% left the screening prematurely, some even crying, and one person fainted. Still, 75% loved the movie. I can see it just now. After then, the movie, people are standing and clapping, and someone nudges the other and says, "What's wrong with Bob?" "It's okay, he'll wake up. He just had a bad heart. One of the scenes was too much for him." Anyway, how did you like the movie? Something else, huh? One can only think of Cronenberg's 1986 The Fly, which is the closest to matching the DNA of this film. It's a movie that devolves into a horror flick of monstrous proportions, and to some, it might get silly at the end because just when you think things can't get any worse, they do. I think if anything, this movie does beat you over the head about what we as a society value most. Of course, it is beauty. You and I know that, but this movie doesn't think you get it. That might be its greatest weakness, that it kind of beats you silly with that notion until you resemble the monster that poor Elizabeth is in the end. A star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame that just didn't know how to let nature take its course because society is just too damn superficial and values beauty over substance.
People are gonna love that.
Wait, they do value substance a lot in this movie. Too much, in fact. After all, that's the name of the movie, The Substance. Anyways, I'm giving this an 8 out of 10. Please let me know what you think of the movie. Was it all style and no substance, or did you think otherwise? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you the next time when we venture into the void.